We got to get in the room.
Yeah.
Some of us have to be in the room. We can't all stand outside the room and holler.
Yeah.
Some of us got to be in the room.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. I'm joined today by my politics team colleagues, Avi Bajpai, who covers the legislature with me, and Korie Dean, our higher education reporter. And as we all know, politics and higher ed crosses over, especially when it comes to budget time. That voice you heard at the top of the show is Senator Paul Lowe, a Forsyth County Democrat, and probably going to be a key figure in budget negotiations. This is the General Assembly's spring break. They usually take a break around Easter, usually, and school spring breaks, and it kind of changes every year. This is the year that both the House and the Senate are out of session this entire week. And so they really had planned the Senate for a while. They wanted to have their budget out and voted out before this break. And then this break is hopefully lawmakers back in their districts. They're doing things with constituents. They're taking a break, spending time with their families, going back to their actual jobs. And then we'll be waiting on the House budget, which won't come out until the end of May. So Senate Leader Berger, the Republican, told us he thinks budgets are about policy. So we've been pushing over these years about asking, why are there things in the budget that aren't just money spending? And he said that's tied together. So really the Senate's fiscal budget is pretty conservative with spending. They put more, I believe it's $4.75 billion, got it back to that for the rainy day fund. The state employee raises are real low, 1.25%, which is less than Democratic Governor Josh Stein had pushed for 2%. The House will probably have ones higher than that when they get to this process. But what was really significant about this came out Monday night. They had the press conference. The budget bill only came out, or the top lines came out 10 minutes before. So we all spent Monday night going into this. And then it went through committee. Tuesday, I sat through committee. There was a very long voting session on Wednesday. Avi was on the Senate floor for that, along with our colleague, Luciana Perez-Uribe-Ganassi. And it was, other than the length of it, which happens sometimes with, kind of meaty bills, it's who voted for it. Some Democrats will vote for it sometimes, but it was former Democratic leader Dan Blue, who was replaced by Democrat Sidney Batch as far as leading the Democratic caucus. Of course, they're both senators still. That was a big deal. So before that vote happened, Avi set what is it like being in the room in the Senate? What stood out with the way debate went?
Just the fact that the sheer number of amendments, first of all, we're talking about almost, I think, in total 50 amendments, Republicans this session, something that I was talking about with a couple of other reporters on Wednesday, noticing the fact that in the past we've seen Republicans defeat a lot of Democratic amendments by just tabling them. And this session, we've seen this practice of substitute amendments. So they have these amendments ready to go. And sometimes they're sort of directly relevant to the issue at hand to kind of a response to the amendment. Sometimes they're not. But basically, it's just Republicans saying, we're not going to take up, instead of taking up your amendment, we're going to substitute in this amendment. So we're in total almost 50 amendments and more than 24 Democratic ones that were defeated, and just a lengthy, I would call it, comprehensive, fairly comprehensive, but thorough debate. Democrats hit a number of different points, a number of shortcomings that they feel are in this budget, not spending enough on public schools, on teachers, on state worker raises.
What they usually will debate about.
Yeah.
But first, Democrats are a super minority. So really their power is in what they're saying on the debate floor, not as their vote, doesn't have obviously as much impact since they don't have the control. And
the degree to which they stand unified as one block in opposition to Republicans. This issue of Democrats crossing over to vote with Republicans. I feel like in the last long session, it was really, we were looking at the House And this year, what's been really interesting is you mentioned Senator Paul Lowe and Senator Dan Blue, and there's two other senators, Democratic senators, who voted with the two of them to support the Republican budget. That's Senators Gladys Robinson and Joyce Waddell. And one thing that we've noticed actually is that this wasn't the first time that at least three of those senators, Blue, Lowe, and Robinson, have kind of banded together to support Republican legislation. I mean, this is something that's come up. This has been noticed around the Senate, around the building, on a couple of different bills. There was a healthcare bill early on, some other legislation too. So this is a really interesting dynamic to keep track of this session, because first, for a long time, it was a few swing Democrats in the House. But I feel like, this year, we're looking really at the Senate as well.
It's a little bit different because, Blue as Democratic leader, he is going to do what the Democratic governor, also wants him to do, which was, former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. And it's different now that it frees him a bit, because he's not the caucus leader to make decisions for what he wants. And he had one of these amendments. He got more Wake district attorneys, right?
Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I think his was the only Democratic amendment to go through. He had been talking with Republican budget writers throughout the week about getting additional assistant district attorneys for Wake County, and he got 5 of them, I believe. That amendment passed, as opposed to more than 2 dozen that didn't.
Well, let's listen to this clip from Senator Lowe, who you talked to on the floor after session on Thursday, when the budget bill has to be voted on 2 different days. So Thursday was just like the quick final vote. This is Senator Paul Lowe, whose voice you also heard at the beginning of the show.
There are obviously many reasons to vote against that budget. But one of the primary reasons I voted for that budget is there's some major things that are happening within Senate District 32, and the opportunity to serve on the conference committee where we can try to work on some of those things that are negative. Somebody has to be in the room for that stuff. And I think it's important to be in the room to negotiate for the people of 32nd District.
So how did you caught him on the floor right after he was up for talking?
Went straight up to him after they adjourned. He sits next to Senator Blue. So I was trying to get all 4 of them. I did end up talking to Senators Lowe and Waddell, Senator Waddell, after a health committee that was right after. But, it was what was interesting to me was that both Lowe and Waddell were saying, this doesn't mean that they support substantively necessarily the budget as it stands right now. They really want to have a seat at the table to fix things, that they have some lingering concerns, some issues with this, and one of those was the Office of Historically Underutilized Businesses. This was something that Republicans proposed eliminating in this budget, and that came out during committee as a top concern for a number of Democrats.
Robinson.
Yeah, and a number of these senators were saying they really want to press Republicans, emphasize the importance of this office, and try to save it.
So Lowe has voted before with Republicans. He's a moderate Democrat. Dan Blue, the sit-down interview I had with him, a couple of years ago, and he said that he considers himself a moderate Democrat. He said that a lot of them are. Maybe things are a little bit different now with how things are going. Democrats have not regained power in the Senate, and Sidney Batch is a different leader for the majority of the caucus who are opposing Republican votes. We need to take a quick break. When we come back, we need to talk about the Republican who voted against the budget, and we need to get to the higher ed money and policy in the budget. We'll be right back.
Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan here with Korie Dean and Avi Bajpai. Before the break, we talked a lot about the Senate debate and about this faction of Senate Democrats. We're going to talk more about what's actually in the budget. And Korie covers higher education. She took a look at what she sees, again, as we were saying, that this is what the Senate wants. The House is still going to come back a month from now with what they want, and then they'll figure out the final version. But Korie, what did you notice in the budget?
Yeah, as we talked about before, the budget here in North Carolina does include a lot of policy. So as far as higher ed, the policy side of things is what caught my eye more. Also, budgets can provide money. Budgets can also take money away. So that's kind of what has interested me as far as higher ed goes. So two things off the bat that I find pretty interesting is that the Senate wants the Board of Governors, which oversees all of the UNC System schools, so all the public universities, to implement a couple of reviews for the campuses. One is for university centers and institutes, and that is reviewing those entities, finding ones that are, quote, low performing, redundant, failing to maximize the receipt of federal grant funds, or are otherwise in conflict with federal law, state laws, and the policy of the Board of Governors, and to eliminate those. And the goal there would be to eliminate more than $33 million. I believe it's in each year of the biennium, so for the next 2 years. And on a similar vein, the Senate wants the Board of Governors to review all academic programs across the entire UNC system, and again, reduce or eliminate those that are, quote, low performing, redundant, or have insufficient enrollment, or produce an insufficient return on investment. So that one is interesting because it's kind of following a pattern that we've seen this year in the legislative session of lawmakers wanting to codify some things that the UNC system at least has already done. Avi and I wrote about the Senate's DEI or anti-DEI bill, which for the public universities at least, pretty much the UNC system has already repealed most, if not all, of its DEI practices. So the Senate has a bill, though, that would kind of put that into law. And this is kind of the same thing where the Board of Governors last year already approved a policy that requires chancellors who oversee each individual campus to review academic programs. I believe it's at least every 7 years, if not sooner. The Senate, I guess, wants that to be done a little bit quicker because it's saying that the chancellor should do that by June 30th, 2026. And the goal there is to reduce the recurring appropriations for the UNC system by $20 million by 2026, 2027.
That could probably, the end result will be could that be job losses or students not choosing UNC if it doesn't have what they're interested or
Yeah, I'm not sure. I definitely, if you cut an entire major, then clearly the professors in that program will at least at some point be out of job. We've seen some schools in the UNC system already undertake these cuts. At UNC Greensboro and UNC Asheville, they underwent portfolio reviews. Kind of what happens is if a program is identified to be eliminated, they implement a, quote, teach out plan, which allows the students who are already enrolled in those to keep studying towards their degree, but then it's phased out once those students graduate. So certainly down the line, it could result in faculty, reductions in force, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
What do you think about the legislative influence this session? Because I feel like under, former Speaker Moore, when we would ask them about changes at UNC, you'd be like, well, we're not going to run a bill. We'll see what the UNC does first. So sort of like, this is what we want you to do. We'll see if you do it on your own. If you don't, we're going to make you do it. Do you think it's at the point of the direct making you do it? Are you seeing that same kind of influence this session?
Kind of. We're still at the point in the session where we don't know what will actually happen, what bills that passed one chamber will become law, if it passes the full General Assembly. But, like I talked about with DEI, that is something that the UNC system has already done. There is also another bill, the NC Reach Act, which, again, the UNC, that was a bill last session that would require college students to take a course on like American democracy, civic education, that kind of thing. The UNC System knew that that was a bill last year and implemented their own version of it to kind of head off legislative interference, but yet the bill is back this year. I asked UNC System President Peter Hans about it, and, of course, his response, well, anybody can file any bill, and, you don't know that it's going to become law, and that's fine. But it does seem that, and this is a pattern that we're also seeing in the UNC system of policies being implemented, colleges, doing what they need to do to get their campuses in alignment, and yet we're seeing this semester, almost a year, or basically a year after DEI has been repealed, there's more clawbacks of, well, you actually still reference DEI on this website over here for some department, and you can't do that, is kind of the frame of mind that I think campuses are in right now of, well, we thought we did this last year, but apparently we didn't go far enough. And so maybe the legislation is trying to get at some of that too. I don't know.
Well, you said something else we should mention about, but what Hans has said recently about what he wants to do.
Yeah. So Peter Hans, again, president of the UNC system, has said that he is going to direct in the coming months a reduction in administrative costs at least some schools where those costs have kind of outpaced student credit hours, I believe it is. And we don't really know what that's going to look like yet. But he is saying that kind of administrative costs have become very bloated, and he wants to see the system redirect its efforts back towards core missions, teaching, research, service, that kind of thing. So we're still waiting to see how that will turn out, but should be interesting to see.
It seems like kind of the theme of this budget season and everything overall is doing some cost cutting, not the wild, like massive layoffs at the federal level, but looking at, how can we, cut things here and there or evaluate it. The Senate budget does get rid of some jobs. It's less than 1,000. I think it's even less than 800. And they said these are long vacant jobs for a couple of years. Before we get to Headliner of the Week, we quickly need to mention Republican lawmaker from Currituck County, Bobby Hanig, who voted against the budget. Avi, why did Hanig vote against the budget?
Yeah, so Senator Hanig wanted to, on the floor, he had an amendment to keep the state's coastal ferries free to ride, which has been the practice, I don't know exactly for how long, but for several years. This budget would impose a toll on those ferries, ending the practice of free rides. And that amendment was defeated by the rest of his Republican colleagues.
Something that's a big deal to his constituents and anybody that goes out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So highlighting a potential point of tension in the caucus.
Okay. We'll see how that plays out, too. Quickly, before we wrap, let's go to our picks for Headliner of the Week. Avi, I'll stick with you. What's your headliner?
So something completely unrelated to the legislature. My parents have been visiting me down here from New Jersey for the last couple of weeks, and I was driving my mom back up to Jersey. So we drove up on Friday, and then I flew back down on Sunday. And I just have to say, for the nth time, for the record, that driving road trips are far superior to flights. Flying just seems like horrible now for the last couple of years. It's a trend I'm noticing, and my flight got delayed 4.5 hours last night, so I'm not looking to fly anytime soon, at least domestically.
There's definitely more legroom in a car, like even a packed car or even a bus than an airplane.
It was a long drive, but it's fun. You can go however your own pace. You can play your music, you can talk, you can do whatever, and it's
see the world.
Yeah, more
for a longer see the country. That's right. You need a ferry to go any further. See the world. All right, Korie, what's your headliner?
I'm going to make a last minute change here based on what we talked about before, because Avi's anecdote about flying reminds me that the Real ID deadline is coming up, and I'm supposed to be getting my Real ID a week from today. I do have an appointment. I think I know all the documents I'm supposed to have. I'm supposed to get on a plane at the end of May, so everyone please send me good vibes that I have everything I need and I'm able to navigate the North Carolina DMV.
Well, fingers crossed. We'll believe it when we see it. All right, my headliner is a serious news one. Like I mentioned, we're recording this Monday for you all to listen to on Tuesday. In the news this morning that Pope Francis died on Easter Monday. And the Catholic Church will decide who the next pope will be. So that obviously has a lot of world influence. So Francis was a really beloved figure for a lot of people around the world, Catholics and not. All right. We are out of time for the News and Observer. I'm Dawn Vaughan with Avi Bajpai and Korie Dean and producer Laura Brache. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe and sign up for our political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.